Hi, thank you, Meryl, for that wonderful introduction. I'm so honored to be here with all these amazing people. This is my jive, this is my love to teach people the plants. It builds resiliency in our local communities, not only for yourself and your home and your family, but for the people all around you. Obviously, I love to go to my shop every day and help people find the plants and find health and healing. Most of these plants, of course, that I sell in the shop are in jars, but as Meryl said, I love to wild forage, and you know what? It's free food. And the wonderful thing about foraging for medicine is that it's free, and it's absolutely more nutrient dense than our cultivated plants. Although I do realize that opportunities are reduced for people who live in high populated areas, even for a garden, but certainly for wild foraging. And my love also is to connect people back to the earth. And when people understand where their medicine comes from, because there's a lot of people that use herbs in jars, but do they realize the work that it took to get into that jar? And that's that's also one of my loves, is to show people from that small little plant that grows on the forest floor to this wonderful plant that we can use for food and medicine. I think it becomes a realization for them, viscerally and inherently. And I always say, finding that inner witch in every one of us. And I think I also just wanted to say too, is that humans, we try to replicate nature, and even we try to do that in the gardens, but mostly, talking about pharma and talking about monocrops, but nature does it best. And when we can mimic nature as much as we can, or just let nature do what it does best, and I think that really serves us the best as human beings. I also want to just mention that I work with Dr. James Lyons-Weiler with IPAC EDU. I do a lot of classes online. One in particular right now is called An Herbalist Perspective through ipac.edu. And through my own website as well, you can find out all that information. And that information is on the beginning of my slide here. I do a 7-month herbal apprenticeship every year. I do intermediate and advanced courses in my area in person, and more I'm doing online, because the more and more people are interested in the plants, the more I want to tell them about it. So, and I've kind of set up my talk today. Trying to advance my slides here, but oh, there we go. Into some key points to begin with. When you're trying to wild forage for plants, it's really essential that you follow some guidelines. One that I didn't list here necessarily, but one that's probably the most important is to find areas where it's clean to forage. So you never want to forage on the sides of the roads, nor do you want to forage in old orchards, things like that. I mean, or train tracks. Because the pesticides that are applied in those areas, well, for one thing, you don't know. And like with train tracks and orchards especially, they use DDT and things that really break down slowly in the environment. So you want to be mindful of that. So forage cleanly, please. And also, you want to find somebody that can help you ID the plants. Books, number 2, obviously guides, Peterson's guides and wildflower guides are really important too. But buddy up with an herbalist, buddy up with a wild forager that has experience. You don't want to make a mistake with a plant, although it's less likely that, there's very few poisonous plants out there, but there are poisonous plants out there. So you want to be mindful about knowing what plant you're foraging, and making sure you have the right plant. So first and foremost, and then never eat something that you're not sure what it is. Obviously, I mean, these are basics, but because foraging, and especially for mushrooms and herbal medicine, is becoming more and more popular, we really need to be mindful of lookalikes. There's so many plants that look like another that may be not quite as as good for the body. And I mean, mushrooms, that is for sure something you want to be mindful of. There's a lot of poisonous lookalikes in mushrooms, but for plants, the same applies. So just, be mindful of that. And know how to prepare wild foods, because wild food is not like your garden varieties. Okay. Usually you need to cook your wild foods, not always. Okay. If it's a mushroom, you always want to cook a wild mushroom. And that's just what I've learned along the way. And there's a lot of people with sensitive constitutions. And so even for myself, I know I can't eat some mushrooms even if they're cooked. So you just want to be mindful of that. You always want to cook your wild food, or know what it is and if you can eat it raw. There are some spring greens that come in that are fine raw, but be mindful of that too. And also sustainable harvesting. Again, especially for mushrooms, especially for some of these delicate forest plants like ramps is one that's being over harvested. Anything you take the whole plant of. So for instance, a ramp, it's in the allium family. It grows on the forest floor, and it's very easily over harvested because we're actually, more people are harvesting the whole plant and taking the root right out. You can use the whole plant. Another example is a chaga mushroom. Chaga mushroom isn't like a typical mushroom where you'll have, your bloom and it's gone. Or if it's a perennial mushroom, you'll see it growing on the tree. Chaga is a very unique mushroom, and it's wild harvested kind is the most nutritious off the birch tree. And it has become very, very over harvested because people don't understand how to harvest it properly. So it continues to grow. So I'm not going to be able to go through all these different plants and mushrooms in this talk right now, but these are some major points that we need to just clear out, and hopefully people can understand these basic things. But first and foremost, find an herbalist and buddy up to an herbalist, because usually herbalists are trained in wild ID, wild plant ID, and can tell you what plants even grow around you. I do that a lot in my practice. I'll go to people's houses and tell them what's growing around and how to prepare and use those plants. So this is the basic structure I've got for my talk today. I'm going to talk about some green leafies that will pop up. Either you might have them growing in your garden now, or they might pop up. Occasionally. I loved the talk, the other plant whisperer talk about these certain weeds come in to show you what your garden needs. I love that. I mean, and there's also kind of a thing in herbalism where, if a plant grows around you, it's because you need it. And I have a lot of plants that grow around me. And I think because the universe kind of knows that I'm helping other people. So for me, it's probably not, the plants coming in are probably not all for me. Maybe I need to use them for medicine, but I'm always looking at clues about the plants that come into my garden, because for instance, this year in my medicinal garden, I had two different plants that came in. One was shepherd's purse and one was lady's thumb, and both of them help regulate the blood and help with clotting. So I know, I just know that the plants are smarter than we are, just like nature is smarter than we are. So I think that's really important to just pay attention to the plants that come in all around you. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about are some green leafies, and then some trees and shrubs, some mushrooms, and then I've pointed out some other plants that you may find interesting that grow around me. Anyway, I'm in the Northeast, so these plants are pretty relegated to this area, as an aside. So the first one here you'll see is called violet. It's Viola odorata, or Soriorae. And I usually get the odorata, the purple one that comes in, but you can use both interchangeably. The Sororia is more of a white flower with a little bit of purple in the middle, but you can eat the flowers raw, and it's totally fine raw. This one you can eat raw. I love violet leaf. I put it in salads all the time, and I make tea with it. actually, and tincture with it. And so making medicine with this plant and eating it is a beautiful thing. And this is one of those plants that is more of a tonic plant that you can eat for food. Not all plants are like that. Today, the green leafies are like that. So you'll be able to use them for medicine or for food. So violet leaf comes in my practice a lot. Of course, it's high in minerals, vitamin A and C, and many other minerals, and of course the chlorophyll and some plant proteins as well. The medicinal uses for violet is really important in my practice. I use this a lot. It's a wonderful lymphatic cleanser. So what does that mean? It moves the lymph. We don't have a heart in our lymph, right? It's this fluid center, tubules that go through all your body, and you need movement to move your lymphatic system. Well, plants can do that for you, or do that to help you, not necessarily for you. So movement plus these plants can help move stubborn lymphatic fluids. Wonderful for cough. So it has a nice gentle expectorant quality to it. It's considered an alterative, which means it cleanses the blood. And anything that cleanses the blood is going to help the liver, and that's your major organ of elimination. That's got over 500 jobs, so you need to support your liver. And so violet leaf can do that for you. And where I use violet leaf mostly is its anti-tumor quality. So I know I've heard some anecdotal stories about using it for colorectal cancer. I actually use it for uterine fibroids and uterine cysts, which are very, very common in women. It's wonderful as an astringent that way, and will shrink up the tumors as well. So you can eat it, you can use it in tincture, or you can drink it in tea. It's a mild laxative, and it's very demulcent. So what does that mean? It means when you eat it, or when you use it in tea or tincture, it's actually going to soothe the inner membranes of your, the tissues of your digestive system. And it is just amazing for digestion. And that's kind of how it has that mild laxative quality to it. It's also very nutritive, of course, because of all the minerals and vitamins in it. So it's something that you can eat every day. I try to in the summertime anyway. There are many types of violet. There's several different species of violet. The odorata or the sororia are the ones that I use mostly for medicine and food, but that doesn't mean you can't use others. I had a sand violet that kind of volunteered in my garden. I live kind of on a gravelly area, and it loves the sandy soil, and that came in, and that's kind of tasty, but I like the odorata the best, or the sororia, because it's not quite as, it's very succulent, and it's, and it's really easy to eat, and it tastes really, really good. Plus the flowers make a wonderful wine. Pair it with dandelion flowers. You can make a dandelion and violet flower wine, which is really, really nice as well. So the second plant here is called plantain leaf. And so you may have heard about plantain. It is not the banana that grows in the tropics. This is plantago. This is where we get, one species is where we get psyllium seed. This is not the psyllium seed variety that would grow in the Northeast. This one is literally everywhere. You probably have walked over it 1,000 times. This is a major, it's a food, and it's a major medicine as well. High in vitamin C and minerals. Medicinally, I use this a ton. I can't ever forage enough for this plant to keep up with my apothecary, because I use it as a demulcent for the digestive system. It also has some antimicrobial qualities to it. So I would use it for SIBO. I would use it for diverticulitis, any digestive issue. I used plantain. It's slightly expectorant, and topically you can use this as a tissue healer. Love it. Combined with comfrey leaf, amazing tissue healing qualities, eczema, psoriasis, just your basic run-of-the-mill cuts and wounds as well. Really, really lovely as an anti-inflammatory, and of course it's nutritive. You can eat this every day. and it doesn't, you know, it doesn't build up and it doesn't cause any problems because it's a tonic and it's a nutritive. I also wait in the fall. And when the seeds get brown, I take the seeds off. You can certainly save some, which I do, and I just spread them around my garden. And because that's kind of one of those things, the herbalist conundrum is what to weed out of your garden. I don't weed much out of my garden, and if I do, I eat it. So, or I use it for medicine. So it's kind of a win-win for herbalists and their medicinal gardens because our weeds are our medicine. And this one comes in as a weed really, really nicely. And so I would take some of the seeds and dry them, and you can sprinkle them on your foods. It adds a little bit of a like a laxative effect. It's not quite like the psyllium variety, but it's really nice. It adds some protein and some fats into your life, and it's really nice that way. And so that's plantain, and it's just wonderful medicine. And then the third green leafy here is oxeye daisy. And now, if you know what an oxeye daisy looks like, then I suggest you obviously to forage for it. But if you don't know what it looks like, sometimes you need to wait a full year just to make sure you've got the right leaf. And this is a wonderful source of provitamin A. So provitamin A, as you know, is wonderful for eyes. You may know is wonderful for eyes, but it's also wonderful for the immune system, and your liver needs it to help process all the toxins. It is a major vitamin that I think a lot of people are deficient in personally. It also has some vitamin B, vitamin C, and some minerals. And medicinally, it's an expectorant, diaphoretic, which helps disperse heat or disperse water in the body, which coincidentally disperses heat. So it would be useful for fevers. It's antimicrobial, and of course it's nutritive. And it tastes really nice too. Really, really like oxeye daisy. It's very, very yummy, and you'll see me munching on that in the garden sometimes. And that's probably one that I wouldn't weed out of my garden just because I like daisies and they're very, very pretty. So, and I do use you can use the flowers for teas and for medicine as well. Two more, this is my trees and shrubs section here. It was really hard to pick my favorites because, well, I try not to pick favorites, but there's so many wonderful plants out there for medicine. So the white pine, one of the tallest trees in the Northeast, its needles kind of made headlines during COVID because of its vitamin C content. Well, for me, for the vitamin C, but for many people, it's because it neutralizes the spike and the damage the spike can cause. It is highly medicinal. You can use the needles and infuse them to make tea, and it's really high. These needles are high in vitamin C. And they have wonderful polyphenols in them, and polyphenols are these free radical scavenging constituents in plants and obviously vegetables. So usually the colorful vegetables and fruits have a lot of polyphenols, and pine has a lot too. Like I said, vitamin C, we're using the needles, we're using the pollen, we're using the pollen cone. And for medicine, I do suggest, obviously, if you're allergic to pine trees, not to use this, okay? The needles may be okay, but you certainly don't want to be doing the pollen or the pollen cones. But the pollen is used as a male tonic for virility. It helps just kind of increase energy, and especially during menopause, when men have that slight drop in testosterone, it can help that. Kind of just give some energy to them, and it's useful that way. It's expectorant as well, so I make a pine syrup with this for upper respiratory infections because it has a slight. It is antimicrobial because it has a lot of what we call terpenes, and those are the smelly parts of the plant. And so between the polyphenols and the terpenes, you have this powerhouse of of medicine. So upper respiratory infections, it's nutritive, and it absolutely will reduce inflammation and scavenge all those free radicals out of your body. We also use the resin. And, you know, traditionally the resin has been used for lots of different things, including like, you know, just like you can use it as a Band-Aid if you wanted to. The Native Americans use that a lot for that. You know, they use the resins a lot for different, like a glue, but also they would eat the inner bark of the pine tree, and that can be useful just as a nutritive, just as a food as well. And then my next shrub here is elderberry, the famous elderberry. There's 2 different varieties that grow in the Northeast. There's your black elder. They're both considered black elder, but one's the Sambucus nigra and one's canadensis. They're used interchangeably. And they look slightly different, but they have the white flower, as you can see, that umbral, and then they make the purple berries. There's also another variety called red elder, which the flowers are different. They're more stacked, and they make a red berry. So, you know, folklore says that the red berry ones are poisonous, but they are not. I only you make medicine with the black. It doesn't mean you can't with the red, but elderberry syrup is obviously very popular. People have used that as an antiviral for the flu specifically. It's high in vitamin C, provitamin A, calcium, iron, potassium, and it has a wonderful array of polyphenols. Wonderful sugars in there as well, and so very powerful medicine if you want to make some elderberry syrup. Always dry your elderberries, and you can cook them. You never want to eat elderberries raw because they can be irritating. You can have a sensitivity to them and become allergic to them. I've seen people who've eaten them raw and they break out in hives. So it is known that you need to dry them or cook them, or both. I usually buy or will process dried elderberry, and then I cook them to make syrup. So that's something that's pretty important about elderberry. Antiviral, it's an immune stimulant, it's diuretic, it's diaphoretic. So diuretic is going to support the urinary system, and diaphoretic is going to help with fevers, and so it kind of can help with fevers 2 different ways. So that's why you see diaphoretic and febrifuge. They're both kind of displacing the water and the heat in the body, and wonderful for fevers, mostly the flower there. And then using it for sinuses, that's your anti-catarrhal, that's your sinuses. That's going to help release mucus from your sinuses. So elder, we're using the berry and the flower, and it's wonderful medicine. And then lastly, I thought I would give a shout out to the mushroom world, just because, one, it's very popular. A lot of people love mushrooms. They're being harvested all over right now. I think it's wonderful. But again, just want to make that point about harvesting sustainably. Now, mushrooms are kind of an interesting organism because they're really closely related to humans. So if you harvest a mushroom, you can actually leave it in the sun, like this wonderful reishi to the right. You leave it in the sun, actually can increase the D content. So the skin of the mushroom is very similar to the skin of a human, where it makes vitamin D. We're closely related to mushrooms, actually, genetically, and which I find very fascinating. But so you don't really have to worry about harvesting reishi sustainably, or even lion's mane, because they're more like a bloom on a flower. You're not going to disturb that organism. But with the chaga, the first one I'm going to talk about, that's the one on the left. That one can be easily over-harvested again, like I mentioned at the beginning. So when you're going to harvest chaga, you're going to leave a little bit behind. And I also suggest to people in general, when I teach my classes, don't harvest more than you're going to use. And if you see a colony of something growing beautifully, never take more than 2/3 of that if you need it all. And you're always going to leave some to prosper and to grow more. And also you want to leave some for the next person as well, and for the next generation. So don't be greedy. when you're harvesting. And that certainly goes with chaga. So chaga mushroom contains lots of antioxidants, terpenes, which are the smelly parts again, polysaccharides, which are these sugar complexes that when cooked, the more and more you cook mushrooms, the more medicinal they are. And that's just that intonodiol is a terpenoid. Sorry, it's hard for me to read because it's very small. And that's a terpenoid molecule. What that basically means is that these terpenoids are very anti-tumor, anti-cancer, very antimicrobial. And then the polysaccharides are very immune stimulating. I use chaga for prostate cancer. I use chaga for prostatitis or BPH as well. It will reduce inflammation in the prostate, especially the chronic inflammation of the prostate. I have many gentlemen on this. It works wonderful. And I usually mix it with other plants like saw palmetto and pygeum bark, but really, really effective at reducing the inflammation. And then they can get some sleep at night, which is lovely. So this chaga is less a food, more like you could dry it and use it for tea. That's kind of how I use it. I make a double extraction with chaga. And so that means I'm tincturing some and I'm cooking some, and then I take those liquids and I marry them, and that's called a double extract or a double extraction. And that's the most effective way, because you're going to get all those terpenes and you're going to get all those sugars, and you're going to get this beautiful, beautiful medicine with it. Chaga is also antiviral. It's anti-inflammatory for the whole body, and it actually is a little analgesic, so it will help reduce the pain. It's because the action of it being a COX-2 inhibitor, and like I said before, for BPH. So chaga is amazing. You can have a cup of chaga tea. I usually have people mix it with their coffee, especially if you're trying to wean off coffee. It can give you a little bit of energy in the morning, and it's non-addictive. So that's really great too. As a coffee substitute. The next mushroom here is lion's mane. And there's several types of lion's mane that grows. The Hericium species. This one is, this is the one I use. It's actually called lion's mane. There's another one called old man's beard, or, there's a few other species. This is the one I like to use. And it is high in antioxidants, vitamin D, and some plant steroids and polysaccharides. I'm really investigating the lion's mane as useful for Alzheimer's. It helps with memory. So it's very, it even kind of looks like a brain. So we're using it for brain function and brain health. It is a food. It's lovely. It's a very soft mushroom. You can chop it up. You can use it as a meat alternative. It's wonderful. And like a lot of people do with like a spaghetti sauce with it. I've had this wonderful, you slice it and you cook it with a balsamic glaze. It's just amazing. And so it's food and it's medicine for the brain. And again, it looks like a brain. And so that's kind of how we sometimes look at plants in the herbal world. It's called the doctrine of signatures. The plant will tell us, or the mushroom will tell us what it's useful for. And so chaga kind of looks like a cancerous growth off the tree. So there's your clue there. And lion's mane, it looks like a brain. And then the last mushroom here is called reishi. This is when I plucked off my a tree on my land. It is this one's in particular called the species is Ganoderma tsugae, and tsugae is the genus of the eastern hemlock. So this reishi grows exclusively on the eastern hemlock. I happen to have many eastern hemlock trees on my property, and it will grow on dead or dying hemlock. So if you want to find this beautiful reishi, you can look in a hemlock grove. Look for that, especially about July. You're going to look for that roasted marshmallow kind of coming out of the tree. It looks just like a roasted marshmallow. And come back in a month and it will probably look like that. And what I do is I take the mushroom and I'll slice it when it's fresh, and then I'll dry it on a cookie sheet, and then I make medicine with it. Reishi is another mushroom that's not necessarily food, but it's medicine. It's considered an immune modulator, so I would be comfortable using this mushroom for autoimmune if someone has an autoimmune issue, whether or not that's rheumatoid arthritis or lupus. I really love this mushroom for lungs. It has a wonderful affinity for lungs. So if someone has asthma, the more you take reishi, the more stronger your lungs will be. So reishi contains polysaccharides, vitamin Bs, vitamin C, D, and it has some terpenes in it, zinc, manganese, really nice minerals in there, iron, copper, and some plant sterols, which are considered like plant hormones. And the medicinal uses, again, is an adaptogen. So adaptogens tend to modulate. They're specific for stress. But again, I would use reishi for someone with an autoimmunity to help kind of balance that out. It's analgesic. It's also considered a cardiotonic, and it's hepatoprotective. So what does that mean? It means that it's going to help the liver and protect the liver, just like milk thistle would, if you've heard of milk thistle. Wonderful medicine reishi is. And again, I would use this one for BPH as well, for the prostate. It's antiviral, and it's considered a lung tonic, as I said before. So I use the reishi in place of chaga for people who have issues with caffeine and can't process the caffeine. Reishi doesn't do that, whereas chaga can be very stimulating. And there's a constituent in there that the liver, some people have issues processing that constituent, so it can keep them up. Just like if they drink coffee, it can keep them up. So I would use reishi instead. And then some just fun plants that grow around. And I also want to point out the bottom left here is an invasive. And so the invasives are major medicine. We get this rambling rose. It's also called honeysuckle rose. I think there's a multiflora rose. There's a million common names for it. It's Rosa multiflora. And oh, there's a typo there. Sorry. I get autocorrect all the time when I do plant slides because this program doesn't know Latin. So it's Rosa multiflora, and I would harvest the flowers just like that. You can make a wonderful honey with those, or some kind of syrup. Flowers make wonderful syrups. And that would probably, what I normally do is I wait for it to go to seed, which is your rose hip. This rose hip has the most vitamin C of any hip. It's an amazing vitamin C source, more than the pine needles, although together those would be wonderful. And what I like about the multiflora rose is that when you harvest the hip, it's super easy because it comes off one stem and you don't have to take out the seeds. It's really invasive. Because it makes these brambles, and it can really kind of take over a place. But if you can manage it really well and harvest the hips for the vitamin C, you can make jams and jellies with it as well, or just drink it in tea. And then some cattails. Cattails are a wonderful source of starch, and it's just kind of nice to know that they're there for medicine. The part of the cattail you're going to use is you actually have to dig down deep, and you have to get the very bottom. How sometimes you can see, because it's a big grass, how sometimes you'd see the grass growing and you pull up that stem from the grass and then you'd eat the little tip that's on the end. Well, that's what a cattail is, but it's much bigger. And it's like I said, it's a great source of starch. It's considered like a starchy vegetable and very nutritive as well. Then there's ground nut, which is not super common, but look at the flower. It kind of looks like a brain. And this ground nut, you're going to have to dig because it's under the ground, hence the name. And this would be another, like a tuber, like a potato, and so it's wonderful. It's got some really nice qualities to it. So this, again, just a small sampling of what you can find out there. Build resiliency in your own life. buddy up to an herbalist. Know your medicine where you live. I believe that we evolve with the plants around us, and we share energy with those plants. So use those plants. They're there for you. They're there. They're serving you. Also, you know, in terms of just the overall resiliency piece, is buy local. You know, and buddy up with neighbors and other people that may have an abundance of one thing, and then you can share what you have, and they can share what they have, and set up small food swaps. I think that's a wonderful idea as well. It's been kind of floating around in my head for a while now. You know, we need to become more resilient. We need to diversify. We need to get rid of this top-down stuff that just comes from one central location. We don't need them to tell us what we have to do with our food. You know, we as humans know what it is to grow food. We just have to remember what that is. We have to know what it is to find food, and we just have to remember what that is. So find an herbalist in your area. And again, I'm so happy to be part of this amazing lineup. And thank you so much for allowing me to, you know, give a plug to the plants and have an herbalist at the table, and share what I have, because there's so much out there that is so wonderful for you as food and medicine. So thanks again. I appreciate this time.